said one DOJ attorney who, like most of the people interviewed for this article, was granted anonymity to speak freely about colleagues and avoid retribution from the president-elect and his allies. Retribution. It's not retribution. It's justice. Why doesn't your client just cooperate with us, and maybe you'll get that judgeship you want in D.C. Trying to get a co-defendant to flip against Trump. Sick. The government has consulted with defense counsel, Trump's defense, who do not object to this request. Oh, that was painful. The DOJ is terrified. President Trump has won, and now they know things are about to change. We couldn't be happier because no one is above the law, as they said. And if there was a conspiracy inside the DOJ and a bunch of malicious actors who were taking the power of the government and utilizing it to prosecute their political opponents, that is not allowed in America. That is not excusable conduct that they can just pass off as, oh, give us benefit of the doubt, give us good faith, and believe that we were trying to do the right thing here. They shattered 234 years of precedent. They appointed a fake prosecutor called Jack Smith, and they were corrupt every step of the way. So now repercussions are coming. And Politico says they're terrified. Good. Trump blames the DOJ for much of his torment over the past 4 years. Lawyers there fear what's next. Well, why should they be afraid of anything? Prosecutors say this all the time. Why should you be afraid of anything? Everyone's just going to follow the law. If you did nothing wrong, there's nothing to fear, is what they say. Yeah. Tell that to the weaponized DOJ that was raiding homes of J6ers for walking into a building for 5 minutes. Now, I hope that Trump's DOJ is not like that. We don't want to swap one corrupt DOJ in for another corrupt DOJ. That's not what we want. We want to return to justice. We want to return to order because that's the country we want to live in, not where we prosecute political opponents. But what has happened here in the past 4 years is they perverted the system. And so in order to return the system to the norm, to the mean, there needs to be penalties for the people who created crimes in their process of pursuing justice, so-called. Now, there's more. They're not alone. We got the FBI shell-shocked, stunned. They said, we did everything possible to try to stop Trump from winning. We raided his house, made up photographs of documents we dumped all over the floor, got rigged search warrants in order to execute the whole thing, had armed FBI agents there with a deadly use of force policy that they said, well, it's just standard. Well, this was not standard. Then lied about it, covered it up, deleted evidence, missing text messages and so forth from the entire apparatus. Now they're shell-shocked. But the DOJ is nervous. There is a collective sense of dread that has taken hold at the Department of Justice, which drew Trump's rage like no other part of the federal government during the campaign. Yeah, because they stole $36 million that we know of and change, probably more like 50 to 65 million to prosecute him. He had to come out of pocket to defend himself. A lot of that money came from donors. Some career attorneys at the DOJ are already considering heading for the exits you can run rather than sticking around to find out whether threats from Trump and his allies are real or campaign bluster. Well, we know Trump today is getting rid of the Department of Education, so you better believe he's serious. Those threats range from the mass firing of deep state lawyers to expelling Jack Smith from the country. By everyone I've talked to, said this person, mostly lawyers, are losing their minds, said one DOJ attorney who, like most of the people interviewed for this article, was granted anonymity to speak freely about colleagues and avoid retribution from the president-elect and his allies. Retribution. It's not retribution. It's justice. The fear is that career leadership and career employees everywhere are either going to leave or they're going to be driven out. Goodbye. While alarm over Trump's return is widespread throughout the federal bureaucracy, it's perhaps the most acute at the DOJ, which is probably the most corrupt of all of them. After the CDC, we switched, they took over, which was at the center of many controversies of his first term. Most of the department's 115,000 employees. Elon, please start here. Please. 95% were around for those controversies. Critics believe that the Trump White House meddled in some of the department's high-profile prosecutions. Both of Trump's attorneys, William Barr and Jeff Sessions, both deep state hacks, eventually lost the president's confidence, as his first term ended with a stunning showdown between all of them. But the department veterans say that those events pale in comparison to what they expect when Trump comes back and remakes the DOJ in his vision. They also know Trump's anger at the department has only deepened in the past 4 years as it launched 2 unprecedented criminal prosecutions against him. They say, quote, many federal employees are terrified that we'll be replaced with partisan loyalists. Yeah, like you're nonpartisan independent purveyors of justice. Give me a break. Not just because our jobs are on the line, but because we know that our democracy and our country depend on a government supported by a merit-based, apolitical civil service. Yeah, it would be nice if we had that. You are not that at all. You are promoted based based on your usefulness to the political party in power. A trial attorney said she won an award from Bill Barr. It all adds up to a feeling of trepidation, they said, for many of the department's rank and file. They said, quote, "We've all seen this movie before, and it's gonna be worse," said one former DOJ official who served under Trump. "It will be worse. It's just a question of how much worse it's gonna be." Someone's handing him some Kleenex. Here you go, buddy. Here. Now, the Justice Department announced Friday that it's ready to process security clearances for incoming Trump personnel. That's nice. As the DOJ officials brace for the arrival of the transition team that will dictate assignments and prepare policy changes, some are fretting about the possibility of being sidelined over ties to the prosecutors most reviled by Trump, Robert Mueller and Jack Smith. Now, they say Mueller investigated the ties between Russia and Trump, which were fake, never true, as even Mueller found out. Smith, who charged Trump with 2 federal criminal cases in 2023, is expected to exit before Trump's inauguration. But what becomes of the lawyers and other staff who worked with them? Well, they're all colluding in Jack's continued illegalities right now. Unless Merrick Garland issues a new order that subs Jack out, he's been determined by a federal judge to be illegitimate, and so that should have some weight with the prosecutions. Some fear being blackballed once Trump takes office. Well, that's what happens when you violate your ethical duty. Why would anybody consider you to be an ethical prosecutor when you're just going after your political opponents? It's the opposite of what you're supposed to do. Most of Mueller's top deputies have left government or returned to lower profile jobs, but other lower ranking lawyers remain at the department. Staffers who offered even peripheral or routine assistance to either team now harbor concerns they're going to be frozen out. I hope so. Trump's AG pick could set the tone. Some prominent lawyers are talking about gulags in Trump's camp and turning the tables on Smith by prosecuting him. Yes! It's difficult to know how much of the anti-DOJ rhetoric is political bravado and how much anyone with authority seriously intends to carry it out. One early indicator of how much disruption Trump plans will be his attorney general pick. We've got a couple people whose names are in contention. Current and former employees said a conventional pick like Mike Lee of Utah or John Ratcliffe, former DNI, would signal more upheaval. He could even go with Ken Paxton or maybe Kash Patel, who's a Trump attack dog, they say. What about Jeffrey Clark? In the weeks after 2020, they thought about putting him as AG back then, said it's part of the calculus. If we have one of these, they call them extreme candidates, you're going to see a significant amount of career staff say, I don't want to be a part of this. Good. This is antithetical to who this department is. Good. Get out. We don't like the current department. You guys are corrupt. I think that will absolutely inform whether or not a good chunk of the career staff, whether people stay or go. It's great. Trump's impact may be the most pronounced in the Justice National Security Division. In other parts of the department, Trump's changes will be milder or more routine. They're also talking about environment stuff. One place that may not see much change is the antitrust division. Biden's antitrust enforcers have been extremely aggressive. They've been going after Elon. Yeah. Now, some Trump critics urge career staff to hang on. Just hang on. He's only going to be there for 4 years. You'll be okay. You need career people there to make sure that the maniacs in charge just can't like run roughshod over this. I was able to tone down briefs in a way that people who would have replaced me would not have, right? So he's like, I can cover up my corruption long enough to just keep feeding and feasting off the government teat. Get a real job. Norm Eisen, one of Trump's most prominent critics, strongly urged DOJ staff to stay there. He's like, you have to stay. Norm Eisen, one of the architects who against Trump in multiple cases, says they should absolutely stay. You have to stay. We need inside corruption there. Don't you leave. It's important for people to stay put so they can act as moles inside. Now, the FBI also shocked, stunned over Trump's re-election. How could we let this happen? They worked so hard to create fake cases against him, fake raids, fake prosecutions, fake warrants, and more. The brass of the 7th floor at the FBI headquarters in Washington have been in a daze and wary of a house cleaning since Trump was re-elected, according to inside sources. The Washington Times learned through several anonymous bureau sources that senior agency executives were stunned. They were shell-shocked that Trump beat Kamala. The first FBI source said, you know the fit test, referring to the agency's physical fitness requirement, how they let the standards slack at the fit test? Everyone's going to have a real problem when they're running for the door. Is she saying that everybody's like fat there or something? I think that's what she's saying. The first FBI source is saying we have a bunch of fat FBI agents. I think. You know the fit test? Fit test. Yeah, how they let the standards slack on the fit test. Yeah, everyone's going to run for the first time in their lives and have a real problem when they're running for the door to get out of the FBI. Maybe they can grab some hamburgers on the way out. FBI Director Wray and Deputy Director Paul Abate have little chance of remaining at the Bureau by the time Trump's inaugurated. So long, Chris. No more private jet for you, buddy, for your 10-minute flight. FBI employees recall Trump firing James Comey 5 months after taking the oath. It's a countdown for Wray because people here don't think he'll stay to get fired. After what Trump did to Comey, Trump will say, yeah, fire his A. Don't let him take the plane home. Mr. Comey learned about his termination while flying to California on the Bureau Bureau's airplane. Oh, remember that? He landed. He's like, you're fired. What? Media was like, you can't do that. You get fired in the middle. Yeah, you're done. You're not coming home. Mr. Trump then appointed Mr. Wray. Terrible. The director's term is 10 years, depending on the president's confidence. Sources say others on the 7th floor of the FBI are so concerned about their jobs, they're likely to flood Washington's private security job market, and they'll realize how useless they are. Most of the sources said no one's job in the FBI at a GS-14 level or higher is safe, and they fully expect Trump to, quote, smash the place to pieces when he gets in, and that it will be a bloodbath. Their word, not Trump's. Former FBI whistleblower George Hill told the Washington Times that people in the agency say that the FBI is, quote, frazzled. Maybe they'll feel better if they go arrest some more innocent J6ers. They'll make them feel better. I have friends still at the Bureau telling me that no less than 50 senior executives are scrambling to retire ASAP. The Times reached out for comment. Didn't hear anything. FBI and Trump have had a tense history. Trump's firing of Comey raised suspicions at the DOJ. Now Trump, no one cares. Do whatever you want, man. A subsequent government watchdog investigation found that the FBI officials made numerous errors or omissions when they got surveillance of Trump's campaign aide with the fake FISA warrant, creating evidence to spy on his campaign. Sick people. More recently, the Times exclusively reported about an FBI whistleblower and their protected disclosure to Congress that Mr. Comey launched an off-the-books undercover criminal investigation of Trump in June 2015. The operation was not predicated on anything, but they were investigating him because they're corrupt, sick people. Mr. Trump also clashed with McCabe, who was fired before he retired, and then he went over to become a cable news analyst. They also raided Trump's home, and Trump's re-election is obviously keeping that in jeopardy. Many at the FBI resigned after Trump took office last time, and so we'll see if that happens again. FBI agents spent much of their time during the Biden administration seeking out the J6ers. Yeah, that's right, they did. They didn't do anything useful other than that. Mr. Trump has pledged to pardon them at the beginning of his second term. A third FBI source said some Bureau of personnel tired of the J6 investigation are amused at the fact that Trump likely pardons everybody involved in January 6th. He's like, yeah, great job, FBI losers. All those convictions, like Thanos, gone. See you later. Bye. So the Washington Times says FBI is free. We're happy to see that. Now, Jim Jordan said this, that the Jack Smith office should preserve all of their records, and sent this one over on November 8th from the Judiciary Committee. Jim Jordan from Congress says, all right, Jack Bucko, dear Mr. Smith, not even a U.S. attorney, the Committee on the Judiciary is continuing its oversight over the DOJ and your loser office. According to recent public reports, prosecutors in your office have, quote, been gaming out legal options in the event that Trump won the election. That's according to CNN, written back on November 1st, saying, if he wins, what are we going to do? With Trump's decisive victory this week, Jack, we're concerned that the Office of Special Counsel may attempt to purge relevant records. As we said here, shredders go, brrr, lighting things on fire, burn bags going off, incinerating, lighter fluid all over the place, torching everything. We're concerned that you're purging records, communications, documents responsive to our numerous requests for information. The Office of Special Counsel is not immune from transparency or above accountability for its actions, and so we reiterate our requests, which are itemized in the attached appendix and incorporated herein, and ask you to produce the entirety of the requested material as soon as possible, but no later than November 22nd, 2024. And furthermore, Jack, this letter serves as a formal request to preserve all existing future records and materials related to your investigations and prosecutions of President Trump. You should construe this preservation notice as an instruction to take all reasonable steps to prevent the destruction, alteration, whether it's done intentionally or negligently, or we just accidentally spilled some coffee on the thumb drive, of all documents, comms, and other information, including electronic information, metadata that may be responsive to our inquiries. Now, this instruction includes all electronic messages sent using official and your personal cell phone account, Jack, including records created using text messages, phone-based messaging applications, or encryption software. And so we want your Facebook messages too. And they went after Trump's Twitter DMs back when it was Twitter. We want your DMs too, Jack. Everything. Don't you delete a thing. If you have any questions about this request, please call us at this number. Sincerely, your friends Jim Jordan and Barry Loudermilk over in Congress. So good. I'm happy to see that's happening. Jim Jordan was explaining the situation on with CNN. Here's how that went.
Let's talk about Jack Smith. He is in talks with the Justice Department about winding down his criminal prosecutions against Donald Trump. In your letter, you warned him that his office, quote, is not immune from transparency or above accountability for its actions. What did you mean by that?
Well, there's a long history in the Congress with our oversight responsibility, our constitutional duty to do oversight, looking at the special counsel. I mean, Chairman Nadler chaired the Judiciary Committee. He wanted this information from Robert Mueller. He got the information. Mueller came and testified. Of course, we've had Mr. Durham, Mr. Hur. We're looking at Mr. Weiss.
Are you going to open a formal investigation into
No,
Jack
all
Smith?
we said is we want you to preserve the documents. We want to see what's going on. And we know from testimony that one of his lawyers, Jay Bratt, threatened what appeared to be a threat.
Yep.
We have the communications and we have some testimony where Jay Bratt said to someone who was representing one of the defendants in these cases that, oh, I thought you were interested in being a federal judge. People may not look kindly on that if you're helping someone who's part of the Trump administration, Mr. Walt Nauta.
Yeah, Walt Nauta was the co-defendant in the classified documents case in Florida. The prosecutor against Trump and his co-defendant, Walt Nauta, was saying to Walt's attorney, why doesn't your client just cooperate with us and maybe you'll get that judgeship you want in D.C., trying to get a co-defendant to flip against Trump. Sick!
So there's facts there, and we want all the information, preserve the records, let us have it. This is consistent with how Congress has always operated.
But it's also sometimes a precursor to an investigation.
Well, look,
are you ruling it out?
What I'm saying is, I mean, if you think about, people talk about retribution. The retribution has been from the other side. I've been trying to stop retribution for the last 4 years.
I'm going to get to that in 1 second.
I just want the last 10 years. You can go clear back to when the Obama administration targeted.
I'm going to get to that in 1 second, I promise. But
we're for stopping that, but we do want the facts, and that's why we sent the letter. Mr. Loudermilk and myself sent the letter saying, hey, Mr. Smith, preserve this information. We want the same thing from David Weiss, for goodness sake, because we know what he tried to do. He tried to get the sweetheart deal in the Hunter Biden investigation, and we had some brave whistleblowers come forward. We want the information. We think the American people are entitled to the information.
Will Jack Smith be called to testify?
We'll have to see. I assume there's going to be some report. All we're saying is preserve everything so we, the Congress, who have a constitutional duty to do oversight, can see everything that's going on. And we have the facts regarding Jay Bratt, one of your lawyers, which they have not been willing to give us information on.
Do you think it would be beneficial for him to testify, or could that
Maybe that's been the norm, but we're not taking anything off the table. We're not saying for sure, but we want the information.
Okay, so let's go back to what you just brought up, which is the question about retribution. You also lead the weaponization of the federal government subcommittee. Trump has repeatedly threatened to prosecute Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Liz Cheney, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, General Mark Milley, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, New York AG Letitia James, and that's just some of the people he has talked about. Do you support him using the Justice Department to go after the people who disagree?
He didn't do it his first term. What I support is stopping this lawfare, stopping this political targeting, political cases. We all know the Fonnie Willis case, the Alvin Bragg case, and the Jack Smith cases were all driven by politics. The American people understood it. That's why they had this overwhelming win. One of the reasons of this overwhelming win for President Trump. So I'm against the retribution. I'm against the Justice Department saying if you're a mom and dad showing up at a school board meeting, we're going to investigate you. I'm against the FBI putting together a memorandum at the Richmond field office which said if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist.
So I just want
all that to stop.
I just want to put a button on this. So what you are saying is that all of the time that President Trump said so many things about people that he promised that he would go after them and prosecute them, you were going to encourage him not to do that?
Well, all I know is what he didn't do.
I know, but we're talking about
lock her up. He's talking about his opponent in 2016, Secretary Clinton, talked about lock her up. He didn't do that. He didn't go. But the Democrats went after him.
I know, but I'm talking about Donald Trump's second term, going forward. Since then, he has said many times.
I don't think any of that's going to happen because we're the party who's against political prosecution. We're the party who's against going after your opponents using lawfare. In fact, I think this is one of the issues that the
So it was just a campaign rhetoric? It wasn't real?
Well, I think he's pointing out what's going on. The retribution. Actually, Liz Cheney in January 6th went after President Trump, said things that weren't accurate, I think, in their report. The other individuals he's talked about have been part of this retribution going after President Trump. Never forget, it started clear back before he was in office. They spied on his campaign in 2016.
But I am not talking about...
For 8 years, they've been going after President Trump.
He won. So my question, and what people want to know, is what he is going to do looking
I think
forward.
He's going to do.
Just for example, 2 days ago, he called for investigations into anyone spreading rumors.
I think he's going to secure the border. I think he's going to get rid of this crazy inflation that's hurting middle class and working class families, hurting our economy. I think he's going to get back to common sense energy policy. I think he's going to focus on protecting the First Amendment. Think about this. Did you ever think you would see Donald Trump, Elon Musk, RFK Jr., and Tulsi Gabbard on the same team? They were on the same team because of the attack on free speech, the attack on the First Amendment. He's going to focus on those things that the American people elected him to do.
I want to move on to immigration. There are a lot of things that you just said that I think aren't totally fact-based. They say that they're for free speech, but there are a lot of things that we know are not happening.
What's not happening with free speech, Dana?
I want to ask about immigration.
People came together.
Well,
all because of the attacks on the First Amendment, on free speech. This is something our committee spent a bunch of time. We understand that there was censorship. We pointed that out.
Let's turn to immigration. Top Trump advisor Stephen Miller says that mass deportations, undocumented immigrants will begin as soon as Donald Trump takes office. I want to play this out for the American people so that they understand what exactly is going to happen. First of all, he takes office. Who's targeted first?
Well, he's already said that. People who have migrants here who committed crimes, criminal.
How are you going to find them?
The ones who committed crimes, you go after them. We've had.
But I mean, like who actually?
Whose daughter was killed. We've had Rachel Morin's family family who came in and talked.
How are they going to be found? Or is it going to be the military? Is it going to be local law enforcement?
1.3 million migrants have already had their asylum case adjudicated, been in front of a judge, and the judge says you do not qualify under the law. We're the party of the rule of law. Those 1.3 million,
right,
they don't qualify under the law.
My question is how you get them.
They're supposed to be removed. They have a removal order. You start there. You start with the criminals.
I want to understand. So people say, like, let's say one of these people is living in their apartment complex. Is the military going to come in? Is it the local law enforcement? How is it actually physically going to work?
The Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security, will work with local law enforcement and will focus on the people who 1.3 million already been in front of a judge and said, no, you're not entitled to stay here. You have to be removed. There's an order there, a court of law. They've had their due process. They've had the whole process play out.
So let's move on beyond that population. Non-criminals, people who are in the country who are not legal citizens, those who have not committed.
All right, so she's asking about the specifics for an administration that has not even been formed yet. All right, so Jim's not the right party to be answering questions about the procedures that haven't even been created yet. So well done, Dana. Way to not ask anything useful. So this guy brought up a good point. Jeffrey Lubin-Tubin was out. I think that's this guy, right? So let's listen to what he said.
The federal cases are just really over. I mean, there is never going to be a trial on January 6th. There is never going to be a trial on the Mar-a-Lago classified information case. As for Jack Smith, his investigation is over. Whether he personally gets fired, he's a Department of Justice employee, he could maybe have a job there, but he will leave that investigation at the beginning of the Trump term next year. The interesting question is, what does Congress want with him? I mean, what does Congressman Jordan, there's an implicit threat there.
Right.
But,
can he be jailed?
As long as the rule of law exists in something like its current form, there is no way you can imprison Jack Smith. However,
Why not?
What you could do.
He misappropriated $36 million that we know of and a lot more after that. And he was on notice for a long time that his authority was going to be challenged. And now it has been challenged and adjudicated in one court, and he's still spending money and still acting adverse to Trump.
Is call him in to testify. And there I would say to the Republicans, be careful what you ask for. Because if Jack Smith has a forum to talk about these cases, I doubt it would go so well for President Trump.
Yeah, and honestly, the Republicans are quite terrible in Congress. Every time there's one of those hearings, we're just like, what are you doing? Why are you asking questions like that? They go on these little dumb speeches and they're not as good. The Democrats turn it into a circus and it makes everybody look foolish. So let's go through the documents. Now, Jack Smith, obviously the prosecutor who's still lingering on. This is his office. Molly Gaston, the woman we've been talking about here for years now. Here's the government's pathetic, whimpering motion. Says the government files their unopposed motion to vacate the briefing schedule. Everything on the calendar is going to be deleted. So here's what Jack's office, illegitimate Jack, what he wrote. As a result of the election held on November 5th, the defendant, you should call him President-elect, punk, is expected to be certified as the President-elect on January 6th and inaugurated on January 20th. The government respectfully requests that the court vacate the remaining deadlines in the pretrial schedule to afford the government time to assess this unprecedented circumstance and determine the appropriate course going forward consistent with the Department of Justice policy, since we can't prosecute our own president. By December 2nd, the government will file a status report or otherwise inform the court of the result of its deliberations. The government has consulted with defense counsel, Trump's defense, who do not object to this request. Oh, that was painful for Molly. They were working hard, man, so hard. This is the case that was going to make their whole career. And, well, they bit off more than they can chew. And Chutkan accepted it. So here's what she said. Says the government's unopposed motion to vacate briefing is granted. All remaining deadlines in the January 6th case are hereby vacated. By December 2nd, the government shall file a status report indicating its proposed course for this case going forward, signed by the judge. And so these are devastating for them to write. They're totally disappointed. They have a good poker face right here, but they have done everything humanly possible to rig this case in their favor, and they've lost. Unbelievable victory, my friends. So Trump and his team are now warning the DOJ, get on board or get out of the office. Mark Paoletta says the new administration is not going to tolerate any DOJ resistance to the president-elect's policy goals. Mark Paoletta is a conservative lawyer working on Trump's transition. He offered a stark warning to career lawyers at the department on Monday, saying those who refuse to advance Trump's agenda should resign or face the possibility of being fired. Politico wrote the story that we read earlier at the start of the segment, and he wrote on X in response to that. He says, once the decision is made to move forward, career employees are required to implement the president's plan. If these career DOJ employees won't implement President Trump's program in good faith, they should leave. Those employees who engaged in so-called resistance against the duly elected president's lawful agenda would be subverting American democracy, and those that take such actions would be subject to disciplinary measures, including termination. He recited a laundry list of Trump goals: mass deportations, ending birthright citizenship, which is debatable in the first place, issuing pardons and commutations, reversing lawfare, holding accountable those who weaponized the government authority to abuse Americans. Paoletta, the former counsel to Pence and to the Office of Management, is playing a role in drafting these changes to DOJ policy that are going to be put into effect as soon as President Trump is sworn in January. Let's go. We also are seeing that Congress is about to gift Trump sweeping powers, they say. So this just got dropped one day ago. It says the House is set to vote on Tuesday on a bill that would let the administration destroy nonprofits if it says they support terrorism. And so they're hitting the red alert button on some of these nonprofit grifts. They say Trump has made no secret his desire for revenge. Now, after he secured a second term, Congress is already moving to hand him power. There's this act called Stop Terror Financing and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act that allows them to, quote, destroy terrorist supporting organizations. Now, a lot of people are fighting back against this, the ACLU and others. Unclear what Democrats will do, but the current version that was introduced is paired with a provision that would provide tax relief to American hostages that are in custody. Under the bill, the Treasury Secretary could strip 501c3 status for terrorist supporting organizations. And so I think they're saying that maybe they'll apply these to Antifa groups, pro-Palestine groups that are at risk, right? So any 501c3s that are involved in certain activities might come under scrutiny. And of course, Palestine is on that list. So Trump's administration may take action on this. At the veteran ceremony, you see this was Kamala and Jill sitting next to each other. Don't look like they're on friendly terms out there today. And as the aftermath of the Democrats' downfall continues, not only is the DOJ in terror, not only is the FBI shell-shocked and freaked out, but even Mark Cuban is now deleting all of his Twitter posts and his Kamala Harris content. Oh no. Now, he was among Kamala's most vocal supporters, endorsed her, did all the things, was calling into the shows. Now, all of a sudden, all of his posts about Kamala are gone. A quick search on X shows that Cuban has deleted every one of his posts that contains the name Kamala, and he has just one post on his feed with the name Harris. Everything else got nuked. He only has 2 posts containing the term Trump on his feed, with both of them related to his comments on The View, and that's gone, right? Libs at TikTok was the first to realize this. Everyone's abandoning ship. What somewhat is interesting here is that he's yet to delete any of his Trump posts on Instagram. So he's just getting rid of them on X. Maybe he'll just get to Instagram later. But meanwhile, Trump and the new administration are forming. Trump and Elon have been hanging out at Mar-a-Lago. This is CNN reporting it. And Caitlin Collins doesn't seem too happy about this new bro-ship that's happening.
Mar-a-Lago has basically been brimming for the last 2 days, I'm told, with 2 kinds of people. Those angling for a job and those who are trying to influence Trump into hiring their picks. But one person has loomed over all of that. His name is Elon Musk. Multiple sources tell me tonight that Musk has been seen at Mar-a-Lago nearly every single day since Donald Trump won, dining with him on the patio at times. Today, they were seen on the golf course together. Musk has been in the room when world leaders have called Trump. And tonight, we've learned he's also weighing in on staffing decisions, making clear his preference for certain roles even.
Nice.
Publicly tonight, Elon Musk is backing Florida Senator Rick Scott as the next leader of the Republican conference to replace Mitch McConnell. While Musk himself is still not expected to take any kind of formal position inside Trump's administration, given how complicated it would be with his companies, what's becoming clearer tonight is that he doesn't really need to, with one source telling me Elon Musk is having just as much influence from the outside.
And probably having a lot of fun too. And we're excited to see what comes out of that as the great American dream team continues to coalesce around Trump and as they take back the White House.